we track contribution margin by day. So we literally forecast every quarter before the quarter, and we have, what we think we'll do in revenue, what we think we'll spend on ads, all of our fixed costs for marketing. We kind of know where they're going to shake out. Divide those by the number of days in the month, and we can see daily, we can still make positive contribution margin if the volume is in. And I think that's the thing that people sometimes hone in almost to a fault on that MER or that cost of sale metric, when at the end of the day, you can still have a positive contribution with a high MER. And I think that's something that people miss out on a lot these days.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Ryan Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. I'm Ryan Roisentul, your host, and today I'm super excited to have Ryan Beltran, co-founder of Original Grain, here on the show. Ryan and his brother Andrew launched the brand back in 2013. That's a long time ago, with a highly successful Kickstarter campaign that raised over $500,000. And since then, they've grown Original Grain into a unique watch brand known for its quality, sustainability, craftsmanship, selling over 500,000 watches since then. In addition to reaching their 10-year anniversary, they planted 700,000 trees. That's a lot of trees as well. Partnered with iconic brands like Jack Daniels and the New York Yankees. Sorry, that's a tough word for me. We'll dig into their approach to acquisition, retention, partnerships, and many more interesting topics. Hey, Ryan, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, appreciate that. That's a heck of an intro. I love that. That was great.
Yeah, my pleasure. So why don't you start by introducing yourself and company?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've been at this thing since 2013. That's when we got our initial launch via Kickstarter. That's a pretty unique story in terms of how we got started. But we've built the brand over the last decade, like you were saying, really selling unique watches and other accessories, but mainly watches with unique and reclaimed materials like whiskey barrels, guitar wood. We did a thing with the Yankees where we used old 1923 stadium chairs and told that whole story. And so we've really built the brand on that, on the back of just telling a cool story. One of our taglines was, "It's more than a timepiece; it's a piece of time." And that's really what we're trying to tap into, is just affinity for materials, whether that's, whiskey or sports or guitars or things like that. And we've kind of built the brand that way.
Amazing. Yeah. So I've been reading about your story and even watched the video you have on your website. And yeah, you can really connect with the brand, the mission, and everything you do. So that's amazing. So let's talk about one thing. You don't stay in business unless you do one or two things right. And you have seen a lot of things, because e-commerce in the last 10 years probably suffered a big transformation, like technical, from the technical aspect, from, the advertising platforms, the good old Meta days, so how do you see that evolved? We have had a recent conversation about this with Neil Goyal, and I have posted about this on my newsletter and on social media as well, that, commerce today is not what it was 10 years ago and 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. So if you can go back for a minute, what can you say that you saw as the evolution of e-commerce from your company birth?
Yeah, well, we've seen it all. Sometimes I tell people that I think we started before direct DTC was an acronym, or at least it was becoming one at the time. Shopify was still relatively new. I think people were still deciding, do I want to be on, Shopify, or do I want to be on, wasn't Magento, but there's a couple other, WooCommerce, and and it's funny, it was like such a clear definitive answer now, but back then people weren't so sure. And I think what we all say, anyone who was in that era, that from 2010 to 2016, 17, is like, we wish we would have spent more money, because The ROAS was 5+, and in-platform metrics were through the roof. And I remember flipping on our first ads like in 2014, and just e-com, they're like basically that DPA ads essentially is what they were. White carousel, literally that's it. And like it was like we were just like printing money, right? It was like it was shooting fish in a barrel. But one thing I like to say is the golden rule of business is to stay in business, because it's cyclical in nature. We've had tough times over the years, in particular with COVID. Like we weren't a brand or a product category, watches, that benefited from people sitting at home and working from home. Like those people weren't investing in watches, in particular fashion watches. Now I know the luxury end of the market for watches and timepieces exploded, right? And people were buying APs for 30,000 and flipping them for 60 or more, like within a week. I'm not talking about that. The $200 to $600 price point for watches took it was a tough hit. And so we had to weather that storm. And we had some learnings coming out of that. I think we were a little conservative at times. But we've learned a lot about just the ebb and flow of the funny thing too is we're still spending 85% of our budget on Meta. From a marketing channel perspective, things haven't really changed that much. I know we all like to talk about, the TikTok shop, and, I know YouTube's rolling out their platform and everything is happening in platform these days, but, everyone I talk to is still spending most of their budget on Meta.
100%. Yeah. Everyone is like the number one platform. It's probably, as you said, 70-80% of their, or even more, their budget is on Meta. I dare to say that probably Google was stronger then. Like we started as a Facebook ads agency back in 2013, same year as you. And it was the right ad channel, the right side ads. I think there wasn't any feed ads back
It's like
then.
a right-hand rail or whatever. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
There wasn't any Instagram, I believe, or Instagram was not as much as Facebook. Facebook was the thing, right? Not even stories, like Instagram stories, reels, nothing like that, right? It was pretty simple. You could trust, as you said, the metrics in metrics, and there wasn't any other complication. But and it's, as you said, it was a money printing machine. But then things changed, and I think I want to know your take on this, that brands that struggled the most during the pandemic, or after let's say the halo effect that the pandemic created, were the brands that didn't pay attention to building the fundamentals, like building a brand, understanding whether there was a true product market fit, whether they had real customers or not. And probably it was because they didn't need that then, or they thought they didn't need that, but they struggled. They struggled then. Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were. I mean, I know a lot of CPG brands in particular thrived, throughout at-home fitness, and beauty, and a lot of these brands, and they're still doing well. But it was just a different. That COVID era was interesting, and we had to kind of hunker down. We actually we ended up having to like reduce a little bit of headcount and just like get super focused and back to fundamentals. And to be honest, it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because we're actually having a really, really good year. Last couple of years, we've been able to kind of increase ad spend, 50, 60%, last couple of years, year over year. And we haven't lost a lot of efficiency, which is, when you're increasing your ad spend by that much year over year, you'll usually lose a little bit of that efficiency from on your MER. We haven't seen that. And I think it is a testament to, how long we've been around and having a really strong base. We've got a really engaged newsletter, decent sized SMS list that we're able to go back to the well on and help kind of establish that baseline for us in terms of revenue. But, we've also just really understand our unit economics now too. I mean, that's one of the things we got really, really honed in the last couple of years. I've worked with my head of marketing, Nate. We track contribution margin by day. So we literally forecast every quarter before the quarter and we have, what we think we'll do in revenue, what we think we'll spend on ads, all of our fixed costs for marketing. So whether that's Klaviyo and Postscript, some of those are estimates, right? But we kind of know where they're going to shake out. Divide those by the number of days in the month, and we can see daily, well, even if efficiency is, at, let's say we have a 50% MER, we can still make positive contribution margin if the volume is high enough. And I think that's the thing that people sometimes, and I was guilty of this too, you hone in almost to a fault on that MER or that cost of sale metric, when at the end of the day, you can still have a positive contribution with a high MER. And I think that's something that people miss out on a lot these days. They're not focused on contribution margin, which is that is the metric that we care about.
And why do you think they are focused on that and not on what matters?
Because I think efficiency becomes the thing that I was the same way. I'm like, oh, I want my efficiency to be at 35%. Like that's, based on our margins. Now you should really start with probably your product margin, and because some people are like, well, my product, with just my cost of goods, I've only got 65% margin. I'm like, after shipping and everything to the customer, you're probably left with 50, 55 points. You can't spend more than 40 or 45 on marketing. There's nothing left, So I think that becomes a thing that people need to start with, and then they can build into that from a marketing perspective in terms of the budget.
Right. Yeah. I was, putting together a mini guide for brands, and I was, going through the content I put together, and I found a gem that it's related to this by Ronak Shah. For those in the audience, or maybe you who don't know who he is, he's the co-founder of Upbeat, 8-figure supplement brand, founder of Days as well, and some other companies. And he was here on the show a few years ago, and he shared earlier this year on LinkedIn that they have a daily P&L. Now they don't call it like a daily P&L, but it's something like that. And it's a WhatsApp message that they generate a few things automatically, and some others the CFO fills them out, and it's sent to a group they have for a few people in the company every single day. And people, including myself, we started asking him, if that turned into something you ignore every single day because you get used to that, or if they pay attention to some, red flags. And he was answering that, they monitor, out of those, 20 metrics that they receive in that message, they monitor, 3 of them. And if one of those 3 is at X value, well, they check the rest, and there could be a red flag right there. And the positive thing is they address that thing. And that's something that probably most brands don't have, that day-to-day track that they should have.
The day-to-day tracking, I think, is like Nate and I talk about this, my head of marketing. He, one of our biggest unlocks, I think, has been, aside from, like doing all the tactical things you need to do, from content to ad account structure to on-site conversion rate optimization and testing. We do a lot of price testing with Intelligence. Shout out to Drew over at Intelligence. I know that I would actually recommend that for anybody, just in terms of, doing price testing and on-site A/B split testing. But, that day-to-day tracking, it gives you such visibility into daily performance without, and I do believe, without distracting you or making you want to make knee-jerk decisions. Actually created the opposite effects for me, where before, when I would see, oh shit, MER is at 55%, we need to cut budget, or maybe we have 2 or 3 days of that. Well, if with enough volume, and based on our unit economics from a margin perspective, we can actually still make money at that efficiency, which in a lot of worlds is bad, right? You're up over 50% in marketing. Now, we don't want to be there between now and Christmas, right? It's going to get a lot more efficient than that. But throughout the year, we're pretty seasonal, with Father's Day and Christmas being, 2 of our biggest peaks. I think a lot of brands those are their 2 peaks, but for us, for sure, we're a highly giftable item. We flipped about 70% female over the next 60 days, or I guess really 45 days now. now that we're in the throes of the holiday season. But yeah, again, I think that daily tracking is critical. And we just go in every day and fill it out, and it just gives you visibility.
And it's for women because they give the product to their significant other.
Yeah, their husband. What's cool, and it's helped a little bit from a repeat perspective for us with LTV. That's been challenging, candidly, for us in watches. It's not something that you consume, right? So you're not having to replenish it. However, we find is women will come back and buy for their brother or their son or their or whoever else in their life. Maybe they bought it for their husband first, but now they're going to buy it for their son. And then that sometimes helps us. We skew a little older, which, is a great demographic, that 35 to 50-year-old female.
I was asking because you said that with such a confidence that, of course, after 10 years, that, what's happening in your business. That it's mainly men. I'm just making it up, right? But let's say it's mainly men, but then it flips over women in this time of the year. And many businesses might be experiencing the same, but they have no idea. How did you learn about this? Because, it's easy to see a lot of orders coming in on Shopify, but it's as easy to get lost in that, amount of data and don't see the pattern, right?
Yeah, so there's been two key measures. I want to say we have so much year-over-year data, which is also an unlock, right? Like that data starts to become more and more valuable. You have more data points, different ways to kind of scrutinize the business and look at your individual SKU forecast. But from a gender perspective, I want to say the original way we looked at it was, I think way back when we just literally were looking at the names of the orders and just saying, this is all women, right? It's all the names are women. But then Klaviyo, I think, has a way where you can export that list and they'll actually kind of auto-generate what they think based on name. And that was a big one. But also more recently in the last couple of years, we just look at where Facebook's serving those ads from a gender perspective, because you can do that breakout, right? In Ads Manager. And it's like 80% of the ads they're serving are to women during this time of year.
That's great. So 10 years means as well, 10 Black Fridays, 10 Christmas. So what were some of the top mistakes that you have made that you remember, of course?
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes we've made is over investing in unproven styles and SKUs. As one of the founders with my brother, which I guess we didn't talk about him too much yet, but my brother Andrew, it's easy to get excited, right, about something new. It's something you just know is going to perform. And what I've learned is I'm usually wrong, of course, and that at the end of the day, what sells and what works. So that would be like my biggest piece of advice for people is like, if you just double down on, I think the IQ bar guy, is it Neil? I think, Will, yeah, over at he was talking about that, right? Like, do some LTOs, do some stuff. We'll do a little bit of that. But we know like our top selling watches throughout the year and from last year and through Q1 and Q2. So doubling down on those would be, and not trying to buy into stuff that's unproven.
I think that Q4 is not the time of the year to improvise and test this stuff. It's more about doubling down on what that works.
Yeah, staying disciplined is tough. But yeah, we've also like one thing we've tried to do recently ahead of both Father's Day and Christmas is leading up to those months where we're trying to kind of scale up our ad spend and maybe take some worse efficiency. What we'll do is we'll launch new products to create hype, but also to sell those to our base early. And what that helps is our global, business. Just yes, maybe you're covering up a little bit of inefficiency on the ad account side with sales to past purchasers, but it's helping you like globally speaking, kind of fill the funnel and invest in that top of funnel. And so that's what we've been strategically doing, is kind of dropping new product in there, like in October and in April and May, and then just as we scale up for those big peak moments.
Yeah, 100%. We've been discussing this with some other people as well. And it's pretty key. Q4, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday, whatever, it shouldn't be only about discounts. Sure, people are expecting discounts and we should probably, unless you're against them, give them discounts. Some brands don't do discounts, and that's okay. But there are some other things that they can do. For example, what you said, new product releases, early access to some things for VIP or all customers, so they can feel valued as well and don't feel that you're after new customers only. So there are many things that you can use that time of the year to grow your email list. So to create hype before the action, let's say, starts, you can use it to um, you know um, probably develop new channels. I don't know. Let's say you
Yep.
build an app. So probably it's a great time of the year to do that and say, hey, we have new app, early access only, extra discount only because everyone is looking for more discount. Well, you're looking for more downloads, so probably it's a win-win, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. We actually we don't have our own app. I know Tapcart, and then is it Fuego? Is the other big one now? I think that has.
I know Top Card. I don't know the other one you mentioned, but
Yeah.
yeah, regardless of the platform, I think that you were talking about the difference between when you started and now with regards to the channels that work to acquire customers. And what we were recently discussing with Neil Goyle is something that really stood with me. And it's whenever we think, like all of us, think about channels, Meta, Google, TikTok ads, but mainly Meta come to mind, right? But then when we think about some other channels, such as an app or others, like you mentioned the newsletter, right? It's not
Yep.
like the most common channel, but it serves you to build a community, to tell a story, to get feedback, to whatever, to keep people engaged, to add value, to educate. So those are channels that, of course, those are not channels that you will invest one and get two or three out of them straightforward, but probably are channels in which you can tap into audiences that otherwise, you know, you couldn't have found. But because people these days, I think that there's a decentralization today, if that's a word in English. Otherwise, I'll make it
Yep.
up. But
Yep.
um, everything is more decentralized. Like I don't know. I was posting about this recently as well. That is, I've gotten a few prospects for my agency from ChatGPT. They found me through ChatGPT, and I was like, "What?" I know my wife
Right.
doesn't search on Google. She uses Instagram. Well, people these days might use TikTok. Some people ChatGPT. So,
Right.
like TikTok entered the search ads, competition race recently as well. So it's not longer Google. Google doesn't want to fall behind. So what did they do? You can see that already. You type in search query, and even before you press enter, you might get answer if it's something simple. And otherwise, whenever you land on Google after you type in the search query, you see some paragraphs, with the AI answer before you click on the links. Because guess what? Clicking on links already feels a little bit old if tools like ChatGPT give you the answer. Jimmy
Right.
King, we were talking about him offline as well before he record. Jimmy King, at the Awesome Pod, he said something similar, but different at the same time. Hey, a few years from now, people are going to be watching Netflix, for example, and then they're going to say, oh, I want that t-shirt. I want that watch. And they're going to
Yep.
want to buy without interrupting their experience. Going to a website and buy will feel probably strange, slow, odd, whatever, right? So things are changing a lot. So channels we don't value
Yeah.
so much these days probably will become more valuable in the future.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. We've looked at diversifying, because and like we talked about, everyone I talk to, it talks about diversifying, but then when I actually have a conversation, almost like behind closed doors, like, hey, where are you guys actually spending? It's still majority Meta. I do think certain channels lend themselves to certain products a bit better than, like, for us, example, $300 AOV, not quite an impulse buy by any means. So TikTok Shop has not been a channel that's worked very well for us. I've spoken to a few agencies. It sounds like you guys are now getting involved with TikTok Shop. That have also echoed that and said, hey, yeah, it is a little harder, when you're when you're above $100 AOV. But I still don't know that means it can't work. I think it can. It's about finding that sweet spot there, across the channel.
For TikTok ads, from my experience at the agency, I can tell you that I don't want to be generalistic and say it works, because it's the same as everything else. Like, we cannot say it works or it doesn't, just in a generic way. But we have found success with high, AOV, let's say 700 and 1,000 dollar products, like, let's say, auto parts. It's not something fancy, or like intercoolers, or those kind of stuff. And it sells pretty well with ads. I don't know, on the shop. One of the brands that we enrolled 6 brands in the 60-day program we're doing with TikTok Shop. One of them sells. It's like a fitness machine that fits like in your backpack. It's pretty cool. It was featured by Shaq and Shark Tank as well, and yeah, medical stuff. But it's a higher price point, like again, $700, and
Okay.
we are getting sorted. We don't know, but with ads, I can tell you, yes, we saw it firsthand with a few brands that it works. I don't know in a generic way, but there's an audience. And to the previous about something I wanted to add to my previous point. Whenever we think about new channels, we think about ads channels, but it's not always ads channels. For instance, I know that you have built partnerships, as I said in the intro, with Jack Daniels and the New York Yankees. So those things are new revenue streams that you didn't have. The same with leveraging, I don't know, affiliates, right?
Sure.
Or influencers. So yeah, talking about that, let's say Jack Daniels, since I mentioned that, how did
Yeah.
you plan that? How did it happen? And
Yeah.
how is that going? How did it go?
Yeah. We kind of fell into that back in 2015 or 2016 with both a whiskey partner and then Major League Baseball, where we actually were at a trade show, and I should talk about retail at some point. We're not currently in retail, although I think it's a good place for us to be as we kind of continue to grow. Um, but some guy had walked up to us and said, "Hey, what if you partnered with like Jim Beam, the bourbon label?" And I was like, "That sounds cool. Like, I didn't know they would do that." And it kind of opened up my eyes to licensing and the world around partnerships. And then we've kind of just gone on a run where I do think there's a little bit of momentum now where, brands have started to track us down and say, "Hey, we'd like to do a watch." So next year we have a handful of new partners that we're launching. It's become part of our business model, so to speak. I would say about 25% of our revenue comes from licensed products. I'm trying to keep that not too high. I don't want to over-index in licensing just because, you don't want to get the rug pulled out from underneath you. But one thing that's been great with partnerships and licensing is that we're able to tap into their customer base, and the, super fans of those brands. Jack Daniels obviously being, I think they're in the top 75 most iconic brands like in the world. And so we've been able to, that's been a home run for us. And we do it in a way where we try and keep it, we're not just trying to slap a logo on the product and call it a day. We're trying to do it in a kind of discerning, classy way. Again, we're in the watch category, so although they're not super expensive, $300, $400, $500, is still a good amount of money for a lot of people. And so yeah, those have been good. They're all royalty deals, so anywhere between 7 and 10% of the revenue is what we end up having to pay. And we do get some marketing support from them, which is great. In addition to just being able to leverage their IP. So, whether that's whitelisting access, not all the brands will do it, but we always push for that. That's always a huge opportunity for us to be able to run ads from that handle. Like with Bob Marley, for example, I think those ads have 35,000 likes on them, and we haven't spent absurd, but we all know what that social proof will do for your click-through rate, your cost per click. And then even if someone doesn't buy a Bob Marley watch, they're still clicking through to your site, right? Which just helps the overall ecosystem. So there's a lot of benefits that we get from the partnerships outside of just selling them to their base. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was putting together, this guy that I mentioned a few minutes ago with the common, things I see from every brand. I interviewed the pod, and I worked at the agency recently. And one of the things that I say in that mini guide is that, you know, everything I noticed, they, it's not about tricks or tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff, the fundamentals of our
Right.
business. And I think that some brands get lazy because they are online brands or they believe they are online brands or e-commerce brands. When in reality, I'm saying e-commerce between quotes because I know recently there was a debate between e-commerce or commerce, removing the E from e-commerce. And it's because, when you don't have an e-commerce, let's say you have a brick and mortar store, if you need to get the customers, what do you do? Do you wait for people to get into the store, or do you go and hand out flyers? You look for, to partner up with some local stores or some, companies out there so you can spread the word. You move your, let's say, your ass and try to get people through the door, right? And when people, come into the store, you try to take care as much as you can. You try to serve them well, to see what you can, do for them, how you can help them, and you try to to create a good experience for them. And when it comes to e-commerce, it looks like it's all about the same. Hey, ads work or ads don't work. That's it. And you said that 25% of your business is partnerships and I believe licensing, right? So
Licensing. Yep.
something for, you know, and again, you've been in business for 10 years. So I think that if you're listening to this or watching this, take note of this because they, what percentage are you, let's say, online? The remaining percentage or
Pretty much all of it is direct to consumer through our website. We virtually have no Amazon as well, which is maybe a story for another day. I know a lot of the people you've interviewed in the CPG space, Amazon is a big pillar of the business. For us, it's been a lot of undercutting, and we just can't compete, to be honest. So all direct to consumer through our .com.
yeah, but as well leveraging partnerships. Some other brands like I don't know Frostbody. Brock Moser has been here in the show. Another 8-figure brand, great brand as well. And
Yep.
the company has been doing partnerships, licensing all over the place with universities and many other, I think, football clubs and like many things because that's what this is about. It's doing business and doing things outside the ads as well.
Yeah. I think we all get kind of, like hyper focused on the ad accounts and the metrics. And, at the end of the day, like that can only get you so far. And I do think you can build a mid 7-figure, maybe low 8-figure business doing that. But I think if you want longevity and you want to stay around, I think building brand, however you define that, through maybe activations in real life, or which is something we're, now investing in, doing these partnerships, things that require a bit more work than just creating a piece of, creative or content that you can flip on your Facebook ad account. And again, those things, we're doing all those things relentlessly. I mean, it's every week, there's constant iteration of ads. I mean, we have our Facebook on Wednesdays, actually, in an hour from now. We're going to look at all the ads. I'm not as involved as I once was, but I still look at them weekly, and we all kind of brainstorm, and that's never going to go away. But I think, to your point, investing in these moments where you're building community and you're building brand, and that's one of the things we're going to try and do next year with these partnerships is how can we show up and be part of the culture, right? And have real conversations with people. And again, you're not going to see a direct ROI that day from that, right? And I think that's why it can be a bit scary for all of us e-com nerds is that we want to see the metrics. We want to see, we want to be able to see the hard data to support the decision.
It's true. In the end, I think that you see all that halo effect into the ads performance,
Yes.
right? Because when
Yep.
you this partnership? Like you position yourself as a leader in the space or as anything you want to position as. So you see the results in the ads. Of course, it's tough to measure many times, but of course, there are some partial metrics that brands can find that it's not 100% related to sales. You if you host an event or do something, you can get a big email list out of that, and then of course nurture them with a special deal and then track that. So there are many diversify things that you can do. But again, if that's is what worked for you, that's amazing. But I wanted to say that at least my take is that they work so well for you because of all things that you do. And maybe for another brand, it doesn't work the same because there are plenty of watch brands, apparel and fashion brands, etc. Right? Even if you are different and you have different mission, etc., in the customer's eyes, there are plenty of brands in each category. But why you and not the other one? Well, here you go. You go the extra mile, and probably they don't.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone recently. I think it was one of the co-founders at Chubby's actually. And he was telling me, he's like, 95, if not 99% of the people who see your ads today are not going to be in the market for a watch. He used some crazy analogy, like you couldn't sell them $100,000 watch for $100 because they don't want to watch. I'm sure they would take it, but his point was well taken for me. And it's how do you create, even through some of your more DR paid media efforts, how do you create something memorable from a content perspective that sticks with that person so that when they are ready, they'll think of you.
Yeah.
And I do think that's also where some of the inefficiency of your ad spend comes into play too, where if your metrics are working out and you can be on the year, right? Filling the funnel is something that I think a lot of marketers like to lean on when they just have bad efficiency. But I do think, if you're measuring that stuff globally speaking daily and quarterly and yearly, and as long as that nets out into a place where you're making money,
Yeah.
I think it's all part of the formula.
Yeah. Talking about content, I've heard many brands I spoke with at least recently. I'm talking about, 7, 8, and even 9-figure brands that they are doing, long form content. In this case, let's say mainly YouTube, right? But are you doing any of that?
So you said YouTube?
YouTube, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. We're doing a little bit of advertising, like pre-roll. The main thing we're doing on YouTube, which isn't super scalable, we'll probably spend about 80 to 100,000 on it this holiday season, is on sponsored YouTube. Working with creators to do an ad read of like 60 seconds. And those have worked insanely well. Like we had one creator last year, he has a whiskey channel. He's a cocktail guy. So his whole channel is about making cocktails. We make reclaimed whiskey barrel watches. So he did an episode about old fashions or something like that. And then midway through, he talks about our watch, and it's so authentic. And those views and those impressions are so engaged, right? There's just a lot of intent behind that impression versus a Facebook ad. So the CPMs are higher. We're talking $50 CPMs, $45 CPMs, right? Based on the number of views they get and what we pay. It can be 5,000 a video, something like that. But we'll see that work at a 4 or 5x, plus. And then they live on, as we all know, right? So although within the first week, it might be a 4 or 5, imagine what that's doing on a consistent basis for years.
100%. Last question I got for you. What plans do you have for 2025 or otherwise for both? Could be, how do you typically plan your next year?
Yeah, so we've been looking a lot at 2025 and just kind of what we want to do we always start with just like what's our top line goal, like, and then build a forecast around that monthly and quarterly. And then what we've actually done is we'll actually back into kind of some like high level metrics around what we want to spend on ads monthly. So we actually already built that out. It's one of the first years we've built it out this early. But just to give us a feel, right? Like, hey, if we want to do X amount in revenue, how are we going to get there, right? And what are we going to have to spend on ads, right? And then of that marketing budget, how much are we going to spend on Facebook? And then how much do you think we're going to spend on some of the YouTube stuff? And then how much do we want to carve out? And as you get bigger, it gets a little more fun because you might have a, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 budget to just try things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure as you get 50 plus million, it's going to be even bigger. It's all relative. But that's kind of where we start, to be honest. It's kind of boring, but it's just like, hey, here's from a high level business perspective, here's what we want to go out and do. And then we'll actually look at it by kind of like by SKU, very loosely. And then, you got to plug in the holes with some of the new products, right? So we want everything to roll up to whatever that number is. Most of it's going to be in we call them top dogs, our A SKUs, which is probably 10 or 15 styles. We sell about 80 different watches right now on the site. 15 of those are going to do 80% of the revenue next year, 75, 80% of the revenue. And then finding, for us next year, I think it's about doubling down on those partnerships we were talking about and finding opportunities to do stuff that creates, it's such a buzzword right now, but creates community with our customers in real life, but also allows us to create content. And I think that's the thing we've been talking a lot about lately is how do we create organic content that people want to watch and we can put out on our Instagram, because the days of just taking a beautiful photo of a watch or whatever your product is and putting that on Instagram are over. It worked from an ads perspective, but dude, we'll get like 2,000 views on a gorgeous watch photo. I mean, that used to be our top performing piece of content. Like we just shoot beautiful watch imagery. Or we'll do some like kind of meme oriented, like yesterday we did a funny one where we like poured a glass of whiskey to the top and said, this is how I'm pouring my drink for the election tonight.
Yeah.
Here's the, election. And like, it got like 40,000 views in like 3 hours. Just, you know what I mean? And now is that going to lead to sales? It's debatable, but anyway, just kind of figuring out different ways to leverage moments to create content that we can put on organic, that's free, that drives impressions, that ultimately leads to awareness.
Yeah, I know we are almost on time, but I wanted to add something because it's really important for well, probably for you, but for everyone, listening to this as well. And it's mainly the importance of commitment to content creation from a founder's standpoint, right? Not every founder wants to get out there and record content for different reasons, being shy or whatever.
Yep.
And that's cool. But there are plenty of good reasons to do it. And again, I've talked to, 8, 9-figure companies, founders, and they always say, I will wake up today and see what high level task I can do for my company. And that's recording TikToks or Reels. So the founders of 8-figure companies are doing that. And that's because people buy from people. And with regards to your question or rhetorical question, let's say, about, can this video of you with a whiskey lead to, conversions? Well, of course, because it's not direct from that video, but of course, people see that video, they check out the page, or they've been following you for a while, and they say, hey, I like this guy. It's funny, or it's fun, it's a point, or whatever they feel at that point. And it's what they needed to buy, or it's just a reminder, right? So it's it links you to something else they love, let's say whiskey, right? So it's always a good thing, and it's way better being on camera talking about watch stuff and boring stuff that it's like sometimes could work and there's a place and time for that, but most of the times, like I interview another founder. I don't know if you know the brand Little Saints. They were recently featured on Shark Tank, like the first episode of the 16th season a few weeks ago, and one of the founders, the two of them actually dress as, they sell mushroom-based cocktails. Both of them dress as mushrooms, and they said, I don't care if I look like an idiot. I love doing this because people love when I do this. So they dress as, let's say, Reishi, Damiana, or etc. And they start dancing and doing some different stuff on TikTok and different platforms. And they are doing pretty well, right? And again, the two founders, according to TikTok, and wearing costumes as mushrooms, right?
Yeah. If I were to start a brand today, it's documentation of the story in the journey and the struggles. And it's hard to get in that mindset as a brand that started 10 years. Candidly speaking, I struggle with that daily. And it's partially because I'm maybe a little shy, but partially because it's not what we've done. That's not how we started. It's very ad oriented. So I hear you on that 100%.
Well, with BattleBox, for example, John Roman, CEO at BattleBox, being here on the pod, and they hired a creator, and that creator eventually turns into a full-time creator, the long beard guy in the videos, and they do just fine. They don't want to be in front of the camera, so they hire someone to do that, and now they have a full team of in-house creators, and that guy is still the main one. So yeah, there's a lot of things. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we are almost on time, so I wanted to ask you before you go, if you have a book to share with the audience by any chance, because we put together a list of books mentioned here on the show every single year.
Yeah, I'll throw out 2 non-tactical, more inspirational books that for some reason still stick with me. The first is Shoe Dog with the Nike story. It's a bit cliche, but I think really emphasizes the importance of kind of not giving up and like staying in business, because opportunities will present themselves. And I think I'm starting to feel that a little bit now. We haven't been around for 50 years, but now going on almost 11 or 12 years in April, you kind of see the ebbs and flows of just the journey and resiliency and how that compounding effect of that. So that one really resonates. And then that and Made in America, Sam Walton, the Walmart story, similar story, but just entrepreneurship at its finest. Both of those books.
And yeah, I read the first one, and if what you said, if Nike had such a tough time,
yeah,
grow, and they almost go bankrupt, like
every 5 times. yeah,
it's like, well, I get to have a hard time too. Every time you think it's against me, well, it's not. It's like it was against every single founder out there. It's tough.
Welcome to entrepreneurship. Every day you can either choose to feel like you're failing or feel like you're growing, but it's a tough life we chose, but it's well worth it.
Ryan, you've been great. Thank you so much for coming on the pod and sharing too much knowledge. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed the conversation. Before you go, I wanted to ask you, where can people go to learn more about you and Original Grain?
Oh, originalgrain.com and at Original Grain on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very active, but Ryan Beltran on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thanks for being on the pod.
Cool. Thanks, man.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.